Thank you for being here. The chairman's breakfast is always interesting, but this year, obviously with the budget issues, we may have some more dire things to discuss. And Governor Fallin has been a great partner for many years now, and we look forward to hearing from her in just a second. Right now, I'd like to thank Cox Communications for being our signature sponsor. With us today is Percy Kirk. He's Senior Vice President and Regional Manager for our area. Percy, why don't you say a few words?
Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody, for being here this morning. You know, what I've seen since I've been in the community is this community is really a special place. It's different than many communities, and one of the things that make it different is how the community will engage on projects. You've seen it when we've worked on maps, something that we could do to make the community better. And it was a long-term commitment to do that. You've also seen it recently with the Oklahoma County Criminal Justice Task Force. And in this case, you have members of the community stepping forward to try to solve a real issue. It's different, but with each of these kinds of projects, what you see is the chamber is very engaged in these. It's a chamber of hard-working, very dedicated staff with great leadership from Roy and you, David. But it's something that makes it a little bit different than in many cases. And so we're looking forward to Governor Fallin's comments, as David pointed out, sort of a tricky time in our economy. But she has great leadership. She's somebody who can help us get to the right place. And we wouldn't be able to do it without people like you who are willing to lean forward and be engaged. And so again, thank you for coming today, and thank you for your support of our chamber. Thanks.
Thank you, Cox. Thank you, Percy. Thank you, Percy, for your service on the board and executive committee and all you do for the chamber. We talked about the budget shortfall. One thing that may be lost on some of us is that there's also 1,700 bills remaining under consideration at the legislature right now from last session. And there's 1,700 new bills that have been filed to be considered. So it's going to be a very busy year. And as you might imagine, our lobbyist group is going to be very engaged in going through those new bills and being vigilant as they oversee this process on our behalf. Staying engaged is one of the most important things we do. We need you all engaged to do it. Obviously, our influence on Lincoln Boulevard and our relationships at the legislature are very dependent on your involvement, your relationships at the legislature, so that we're viewed as the representative of business in central Oklahoma. To that end, you'll notice on your table brochures, I believe, for the PAC, the Oklahoma City Chamber PAC. That is obviously one way we stay involved in trying to make sure that we continue to elect a pro-business legislature. And we've enjoyed much more success over the years as we've been able to make sure that our point of view is heard. So please take note of that brochure. If you're so inclined, sign up, make a donation, and we'll use it to our mutual advantage. Right now, just enjoy your breakfast, and we'll start serving, and soon we'll hear from the governor. Thanks again for being here. We're going to go ahead and start a preamble to our program. The governor's been delayed a bit. We're fortunate this morning to have Congressman Steve Russell with us, and at the table we were talking about the new Speaker of the House in D.C., Congressman Ryan, and the new viewpoint, the new process that we might see in the budget session in D.C. this year. And I thought it would be interesting to all of us to hear the Congressman's comments on how the budget process in D.C. might play out this year with the new Speaker of the House. Congressman Steve Russell, thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, good morning. We were having an interesting conversation this morning. The question got asked, so how is the new speaker working out? I replied, I said, well, I'm amazed that the honeymoon period has lasted this long. But he's actually done a very good job in terms of articulating a lot of the budget and how we get the appropriation process done. You saw an interesting thing happen when we got the reconciliation measure. The way kind of the process works, and I don't intend to insult anybody's intelligence, but for my simple brain, it'll be at least instructive. You have 12 appropriation measures, and in a regular order, we try to get those through committees, and then they would get passed on the floor. We send them to the Senate, they would pass them, and then they bring them back, and then they go to the president, and then they're reconciled against the budget. That's in a perfect world. We've not done that in modern memory. So trying to get that together, if you don't get the appropriation measures done, then they lump them together into a consolidated appropriation, and then it's called the omnibus, and you've heard of the omnibus. And so trying to get all 12 is going to be a tall order. But we saw some success with a couple of measures last year with the transportation bill, with the defense, and we were able to use some reconciliation tactics that actually put a bill on the president's desk where he had to make the bad choice, where he had to make the decision. From 2010 to 2014, 0 bills got to the president's desk where he had to make the decision. 0 bills were vetoed. In the last year, our Congress has put 6 on his desk that was vetoed. So that shows you the difference in activity and the difference in tactics that we're working with things like a reconciliation process. We saw that with Obamacare. We saw that with the Planned Parenthood fight, that we were actually able to deliver that to his desk. Now, here's what we can expect this year. We're under no illusions that we'll get all 12 measures through, but we think we can take a shot at 6 to 8 of them. The pace of the House is moving very quickly under the current speaker, and we do think that we will be able to get a lot of these measures off the floor, get them over to the Senate, and that they will actually be able to take up any of these measures. So it's been an interesting time to watch that. I'm encouraged that Speaker Ryan is also, because he used to be the budget chairman, he used to be the Ways and Means chairman, he understands that process now, having the levers of power as the speaker. He goes to the White House. He gets out on the Sunday talk shows. He's making the case to the American people. And that's a breath of fresh air. So we're glad to see that. A lot of things going on, obviously, in my efforts, the Iran Terrorist Financier Act, this was the major measure that we took up to address some of the foreign policy gaps and shortfalls with the Iran agreement. It was my bill. It passed out of the House a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and now it is at the Senate. The president has threatened to veto that. That doesn't mean that just the fight ends and that becomes some political stunt. I've talked with folks in the Senate about it, I had a good discussion with Senator Cornyn and Senator Corker. We're not using it as some ploy or tactic. There's 50 plus people that we've identified in the joint agreement that are on the terror and human rights watch list. The president has clearly stated that if you were a terrorist or human rights violator and were on sanctions, that policy will not change. Okay, well, we agree. We're holding the president to that standard. Not one to give up a fight. I actually sat down with the president's team from the White House, from the Treasury, last week to talk about the common ground and figure out where we could fight. I said, look, the president doesn't have to deviate from his statements and policy. We want to go after these bad actors who killed American soldiers and put some of my friends in Section 60 of Arlington. They were funding these roadside bombs. They were killing Americans in Iraq. And that's who we're going after. And so surprisingly, we had about an hour and a half conversation with the White House's team on this issue. And I'm going to keep moving and working that common ground to try to see if we can get to not some political stunt or partisanship, but that we can get something done, where we can actually do what we do as America, where we don't finance terrorists, and then at the same time, the president's got his policies that he's pushed for. So that's just an example of some of the things that we're working. We've released issue number 4 of Waste Watch. When I got elected and Dr. Coburn was leaving, I've had the good fortune to hire several of Dr. Coburn's staff on my staff. And one of the guys that we immediately went after was Caleb Crowder. I said, you find that guy who did Dr. Coburn's waste book. And I said, I don't care what it takes, let's hire him. And so we did, and he's just awesome. We decided instead of doing an annual report, where, okay, we found all of these grievous things, picked up the rocks and saw the creepy crawlies underneath. Instead, by doing it every quarter, we can put it into the process to affect it in committee, to affect it in managers' markups, to do the different things. And we've had some good results with that. In this issue, you'll learn that your tax dollars have been hard at work funding solar-powered beer. They've been hard at work funding moonshine. How do you feel about that? Bags of air, where they've actually packaged bags of air and they've taken them to Mongolia to sell them and make statements about clean air quality. $1 million for that. How does that make you feel? It's just absurd. We've identified $75 billion worth of waste in this latest report. That's what makes us shake our heads and say, well, gosh, what do you do? Well, what you do is you keep fighting. If you knock these supports out, you say, what impact would this have? When we took a shot a couple of reports ago on the National Science Foundation, they were funding shrimp on treadmills and doing we're not making it up. Shrimp on treadmills to do this. And I had the head of the National Science Foundation, a brilliant lady, nuclear physicist, fission coming out of her head as she comes to talk to me in my office. And with a straight face, she's making this case of why we needed shrimp on treadmills. I was not convinced. But one thing that it did do is it showed that when light is exposed on these things where there is obvious waste, they don't like that, and they will shake themselves up. And I can tell you who's not in issue number 4 of Waste Watch. It's the National Science Foundation. They're not in this month's report. So we're trying to do good things. We're trying to, with our delegation, we were very, very pleased that we saw a lift on the 40-year ban on oil exports. And that's huge. Tough to try to get to that. 40 years of bad policy. It made sense maybe in the mid-70s, but it hasn't made sense for more than a decade. And this is something that we were able to get lifted, which was a major policy shift. Already ships with our petroleum products are heading to Europe and different places. I've also sat down with the White House on trade initiatives. After my trip to China, we went to a lot of different places. And I suggested to the president's team that if he cares about air quality and environment, as I was standing in Xi'an, which you couldn't see a quarter of a mile, and as you breathe, your nose and your throat is burning. It doesn't matter what political party you are, you can't stand out there and go, oh, there's not a problem here. It is a serious problem. And what I suggested to the president was by taking gasified electric power to China, with the abundance of our natural gas, we could trade our natural resources for Chinese bond debt and reduce air quality, and the president could stay within the sphere of his policy. And amazingly, we had a very lengthy conversation about just that. So you find strange common ground in the oddest places. But can you imagine the president now using natural gas to achieve his air quality agenda? Wouldn't that be something? But you don't know unless you try. And that's what you set us up there to do, and we're going to continue to do that effort. And thanks for letting me give an update to you this morning, and thank you, David, and God bless you.
We are also fortunate to have with us this morning Secretary Chris Binge. Chris Binge is well known to us. He's been a good friend, and there's the governor. I wondered why everybody was going. We'll start over. She took office in 2011, and Governor Fallin has dealt with issues that have plagued Oklahoma for time immemorial. By way of example, our unfunded pension liability. She started a process that will take years, but got us well along the way in beginning to deal with that. The lawsuit reform that she brought to bear in her early years was something that for years and years and years Chambers had tried to achieve. And the complete overhaul of the state workers' comp system has now begun to work through its initial pains and beginning to yield fruit. And those have been issues that many chambers have worked on for decade after decade. They've changed the landscape for Oklahoma, and she has changed the landscape for Oklahoma. She's an outstanding economic developer, always willing to go and make calls on companies. She's dealing with a budget challenge that we mentioned earlier that is of epic proportions, and she's here to talk about that process and some of the ideas that she's already laid out in her State of the State address to deal with those issues, including the broken appropriations process. She's a leader of leaders, having chaired the National Governors Association. Please welcome our state's Chief Executive and go-to economic developer, Governor Mary Fallin.
Good morning. David said I bailed you all out, which I think meant he hadn't introduced all the cabinet secretaries yet. Because I bet you can't, it's hard at times when you go in front of a big crowd and you start to introduce everybody that's in the audience, because you always miss somebody. So I'm gonna make it real easy. David, thank you very much for that kind introduction. By the way, some of you may not know, David and I knew each other in high school. And I got some great stories. And so I thought I'd start out this morning. Just joking, David. Because he's got some good stories on me too. So, but we have actually known each other for a long time. He went to Shawnee High School and I went to Tecumseh High School, and we had common friends and used to hang out as kids, teenagers, and so it's always great to see you. David, thank you for your leadership with the chamber. We appreciate you, and what a wonderful crowd we have. Again, thank you for all coming and getting up and participating in this. Always appreciate that. And I think do we have some of our federal officials here? There you are, Steve, right there by David. Congressman, thank you for coming. Great to see you. Glad you're up there in D.C. and I'm not. What a hard job you have, but thank you for your service. We really appreciate you. It's a difficult time in Washington, D.C., but it's a very important time in our nation. And we have a lot of our, I think we have one of our other state elected officials, Dana Murphy. Dana, there you are, right there in front of y'all. So thank you for all your work. She's doing a great job. Do we have any other corporation commissioners here? Joy, our superintendent of public instruction. Thank you for being here, and Dana's doing a great job with the Corporation Commission. She's got a lot on her plate, along with all the other commissioners too, so we appreciate you. And all of our, I think our labor commissioner may be here. She had to come this morning somewhere. And so I want to mention her, and then all of our cabinet officials, will you just raise your hand? Let me just say thank you so much. I have a lot of our cabinet here. Thank you for your service. Our Director of Transportation, Mike Patterson, keeping our roads and bridges safe. We work a lot together, thank you. And then for all of our legislators that have joined us this morning, will you just raise your hand so I can see, make sure you're at work today? There you are. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate all of you. There's a lot of people you can recognize in the audience, but I just want to say thank you for those of you who serve in public service, because it's a big calling to be in public service. There are a lot of sacrifices that you make, and also don't want to forget those that are in county service and city service. If any of you are out in the audience, we appreciate your service too. And Roy, thank you once again for all that you do with the chamber. We had a great breakfast meeting with the executive board of the chamber a couple weeks ago, talking about the chamber's goals and initiatives this year. And of course, it's all about bringing jobs and creating a very business-friendly climate in the city of Oklahoma City. And we appreciate all that you do with your hard work. And it's fun to watch Oklahoma City right now. I don't know about you guys, but I love going to different events in Oklahoma City, going downtown, and even at the times, I'm downtown every single week, but there's always something I haven't seen. It always shocks me when I go and I see a new restaurant. Of course, what I have to do is ask my children who are in their 20s, you know, where's the hippest place to go eat, or some of the places they tell me. Might not be able to go to my job, but there's always new fun restaurants, bars, entertainment areas, and they just have a blast. It's so fun to see our young folks enjoying living in Oklahoma City, because we really are a city on the move, and it's exciting to see all the great work that's been done. And all of you as business representatives in this room are what I would call the movers and shakers, making it happen by all the different things that you run, and we appreciate the driving force that you have behind our economic growth that we've seen in Oklahoma City, which even in this economic downturn with our energy sector, Oklahoma City still has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation, which is remarkable. And I especially enjoyed hearing Mayor Mick Cornett's comment about a month ago, I think it was, when he spoke at Save the City, where he said we had the 11th most diversified economy in Oklahoma City compared to the major, over 300 major metropolitan cities in the nation. I mean, that speaks well that we continue to work towards diversifying our economy so that when we do have an energy downturn like we're facing today, it helps us get through those things. And that's what I've been working towards, is making sure that we diversify our economy, that we do everything we can to focus on creating the very best business climate possible. And thank goodness we've been doing that over the last 5 years. I've had the opportunity to serve, or we wouldn't be as good a shape as we're in today to handle this downturn. I mean, if you think about it, over the last 5 years, we've had major workers' compensation reform. We moved up to 9 positive places when it relates to frivolous lawsuits in our state positively. We dropped our workers' compensation premium costs by 37%, saving around $380 million, last figure I saw, for businesses, while taking care of injured workers, which is always my #1 priority. We focused on cutting our pension debt by 1/2. It was $16 billion, now it's $8 billion. That's huge. And that happened actually in 4 years, but that put us in a more sound, on a more sound footing financially as a state. We worked towards, as our economy turned around from the 2008-2009 recession, put more money back into education, superintendent. But we have a long ways to go because the recession was so bad in 2009. But we have done those things. We put lots of quality education reform measures in place, which certainly helped. We reduced our structurally deficient bridges by 1/2 in 5 years, making major investments in our infrastructure. And of course, all you have to do is drive around the city and you see those things. But you also see the need of why it's important to invest in our roads and bridges. So I'm very proud of that. So we have done a lot of things that are very important to help us be better prepared to face this downturn, which frankly is not something new for Oklahoma. I was a young girl in the 80s when we saw the downturn and the 100+ banks that failed for many different things, the farms that went out of business, the energy companies went out of business, and we had one in the early 90s. I mean, you can go back through history and just see the economic graph of how our state is done when we have these various downturns. And of course, there's a lot of different factors affecting our downturn right now with the energy sector, and majority of them are out of our control. I can't help that China's economy's slowed down. I can't help that the U.S. manufacturing sector has dropped tremendously. I can't solve the issue at this point, but I want to talk about that in a minute, that the way we do business around the United States, around our state, around the world has changed with e-commerce and how that's affected our revenues. Can't help what's happening in Saudi Arabia and Russia and Venezuela and OPEC, although I'd like to go at times kick them in the rear and say, get back after it, guys. But there are a lot of different factors that affect some of the challenges that we face today that are totally out of our control. But what is in our control is rolling up our sleeves, doing the hard work, addressing the issues that we face today, looking at ways that we can make things more efficient, more effective, to deliver quality services to core critical services for our people in state government, being business friendly so that our businesses will stay here and invest and grow jobs in our state, having fair rules and regulations, that all helps, and certainly fixing what I call our structural deficiencies within our state budget. And when I gave my state speech a couple weeks ago, I talked extensively. Here's my ideas. Here's very specific things that we can do to fix our budget. And I told some people ahead of time, I said, get ready, because I'm going to propose some really bold things that we talk about behind closed doors, but we don't have the nerve to say publicly, that we all kind of know we need to do, but are challenging to do. But it's hard work, and we have to make tough decisions. But when you have, and today's the Board of Equalization meeting, which I have at 4 o'clock this morning, so I got to make sure I keep my speech on time. But when you have what's going to be estimated to be about a $1.3 billion budget shortfall, there's no choice but to do the hard work and to make tough decisions. And so we got a lot of work to do. But I want to just remind you, because I think it's important that we focus on positive things too, besides just some of the challenges that we have with job losses. Job losses are not fun for families, are not fun for the employers. It's hard. I've talked to so many employers that tell me, this is the hardest thing in the world to do, to go and tell my employees, look, I got to keep our company viable and I'm going to have to make some changes. It's hard. They don't like to do that. But they have to survive. Just like if you have a job loss within your family, or maybe one of your revenue streams is tightened up and you got to start cutting some of those cable channels, or maybe not going out to eat as much, whatever it might be. It's hard to do those things. But I want to remind you that because of things we've done over the last many years that I went through a minute ago, just 2 years ago, we had the 4th fastest growing economy in the nation. Just 2 years ago. We created, Secretary Snodgrass, Secretary of Commerce and Tourism's here, we created over 110,000 new jobs. That's a lot of jobs in that time period. And I thought, oh, 110,000, I wonder if that's really a lot of jobs. I want to tell you, I've gone to some of my governor's meetings in other states that were much bigger than Oklahoma, and they'll get up and say, we created 30,000 new jobs this year. And I go, really? We're a smaller state than you are. You know, so that is a big number for our state. We actually, at that point in time, had grown our per capita income rate at twice the national average and growth percentage, which is big for Oklahoma. But because 18 months ago, oil was selling for $107 a barrel, And then at some points it dropped down. See, Larry Nichols are 26 or so, Larry. Hopefully it hasn't gone too much below that. And there's predictions that it could. Hope it doesn't. It's up a little bit earlier this week. Don't know where it was yesterday, but every day it's different. But when you take that big of a drop, over 75% drop or more in the price of a barrel of oil, that's going to have an impact upon an economy. Once again, things out of our control. But there are things that we can do within our control to help solve some of these issues. And that's what I wanted to visit with you about. And let me just say right up front, we can do this. We've done it before. We have smart, capable people that are very much attuned to being able to fix these things, and we can do it. And the reason I know that is because we've done it before. We've done it before in my term. I frankly would hope we'd never have to do it 2 times in my term, but I am, and we will, and we'll do it together. And when I came into office, some people have heard me say this, you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but it's factual. We had just a tiny bit under 7% unemployment rate statewide in 2011, January 2011, because of the 2008, 2009, 2010 national economy recession that we went through. And we only had $2.03 in our rainy day savings account. It was tough. We had a $500 million shortfall, and that was coming off the back of $1 billion shortfall the year before, and $1 billion the year before that. That was $2.5 billion that we lost coming off 2008, 2009 on. But because of things we did, we grew that rainy day savings account by creating those 110,000 jobs, raising our per capita income. We grew the savings account that had $2 to $535 million. Thank God we did that, because we had a big push on creating jobs and being more business friendly, and it worked. So that's why when I say I know we can do this, we've done it before, we're going to do it again. We got smart, capable people that can do that. And so when I spoke to the legislature a couple weeks ago, I was trying to tell them, and they know this, but just to emphasize this, that there are basically 3 options that we have as a state. When you face the type of budget shortfall that we have, you can just take it easy, take the easy way out, not the way I suggest we do it, but you can cut everybody across the board. And when I gave my speech 2 weeks ago, we just gotten our December revenue numbers, which we had a revenue failure, by the way. December revenue numbers. Now, let me just say something about December. December is our very best revenue collection month of the year. And it was doubly impacted this year because we had Black Friday sales. That a lot of you like to go shop, and I do too. Black Friday sales that fell into the December collection period, just the way it worked out. So you had Christmas and Black Friday all in the same reporting period for December. And December sales tax collections were 13% below last year. Got to January, I thought, well, hopefully it was just anomaly, and maybe January would be a little bit better. You have the after Christmas sales in. January was 17% below the average from last year. So now you got 2 months. And just to give you a little bit of a picture, when you think back, our fiscal year begins in July 1st and goes through June 30th. So you had your first 6 months of the year when the price of a barrel of oil was 40, 45, somewhere starting to drop around that time period. But now the price of a barrel of oil is 26 to 30 something. And you still got the second half of 6 months of a year to go, which means that the second half is challenging. So we have a Board of Equalization coming up today, and we're going to certify the revenue figures from January now that we have those numbers. and it's anticipated it's going to be about 19.1%. So I tell you, it's a tough job. We got to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work. I really mean it, because it's not going to be easy. So the three options I gave the legislature was that you can either cut spending. So if you took today's numbers, and by the way, we had a 3% automatic cut that we put in place after we got December's figures, because by law, we have to. But if you did an across-the-board cut for beginning next year, I mean, it could be anywhere from 17 to 19% cut, beginning July 1st, which is hard. Or I said, we can do what we've done in the past, which is why I was left with $2.03. Okay, good, you're remembering. Just trying to get the audience to respond. $2.03. And drain this back again, which is not wise, because we did use a small portion of rainy day funds last year, and what we call one-time funds, to help balance our budget shortfall, because we were in the budget, or in the energy crisis last year. We had $600 million shortfall. Then you could cut agencies and use up the 300, I think it's around 380-something million that we have left, and go back to zero, per se, in our savings account, but you're still going to have to cut state agencies by a big amount. And then the third option, and I actually presented these different budgets showing, okay, if you do budget number one, it's like $350 million cut to education, and that was before I had the January and the February numbers, frankly. And it would be $200 million, I'm just kind of guessing off the top of my head, to corrections and transportation, a couple $100 million, healthcare, a couple $100 million, Medicaid, a couple $100 million, mental health, you know, lots of money. Or the third option I said is we can do the hard work and we can fix our budgetary issues and put us on a better, sound footing for future generations of Oklahomans, and frankly for the next governor of Oklahoma, so they're not left with the situation I was left with. And by the way, just a little point of fact, when I came into office, because we're having this discussion right now at the Capitol for my legislators that are here, and this is not anything about you guys, but just a factual piece of information. When I came into office, there was a moratorium put on oil and gas incentives. So the moratorium had been put on, and then just happened that the moratorium was for 3 years, which just happened to be the starting date of the new governor. And so when I came into office, I was paying back debt, kind of like you get a credit card that's already got $150 million charged to it. So I was paying that debt back, and then the price of energy went back up, thank goodness, high. Then that balance grew over 3 years, but my first 3 years I had to pay back the $450 million I had to pay back because there's a moratorium put on those things. And so that's not smart. It's just not a smart way to budget things. So we got a lot of challenges to do. So the things I've asked the agencies to do is to look at ways to share administrative services, look at ways to eliminate overlapping functions within government, and we've been doing a lot of that. In fact, when I took office, we had 600 agency, boards, and commissions. We're down to under 300. I forgot to brag about that. Saving money. So there's several bills this year that would ask agencies who have similar functions to consolidate their administrative things. IT, payroll, purchasing, personnel. Secretary Snodgrass is doing that right now with tourism. It's working beautifully. They're coordinating, they're talking, they're sharing resources. It's a perfect thing to do. Second is to prioritize your spending on what's the most critical, important thing. And one of my key measurements when I say that is, will someone die? If we cut a particular service, are we going to jeopardize services to where someone might be at risk of their life in a general way? And then third is to prioritize where we make the cuts. I don't think it's wise just to do across the board 17% cut to all agencies because agencies have different needs. And frankly, the needs change throughout the years. A prime example, 4 years ago, or even 5, when I took office, we didn't have all the earthquakes that we have. So if we were to cut the Corporation Commission by 17, 19%, probably not a real smart thing to do right now, which is why my budget did not do that. And so we didn't have 1,000 teacher shortage, Superintendent. There's lots of other things I can name for you, but really looking at core critical functions of government, how can we cut back on things that won't harm people to the least extent possible? Because everybody's going to have to take a little bit of a shave. I mean, just, it is what it is. And then how can we modernize our tax code? So, for decades, upon decades, upon decades, and I've got all these charts, I'm going to show you all of them today, but I'm going to show you some. The legislature has taken one-time monies, which are recurring revenue sources and different streams of pockets of money, and plugged holes in the budget with that. They have taken money and dedicated it to different important priorities, what's called off-the-top spending, to where you get a revenue stream and 2% is dedicated to maybe I don't remember the exact figures, but scholarships to children going to college, which I support, or 2% to health, or 3% to roads and bridges, and I'm just naming off some numbers, but there's a lot of money that's off the top that's being spent. And then there's sales tax, sales exemptions, which the legislature can look at too. In fact, there's 150 of them in our state. And I'm going to show you some of those lists in just a few moments. And so my budget asks them to look at all these things to see where we can be more efficient, more effective, and look at that. So I'll start with a couple things I've asked them to do. One was, and we haven't done this in a while, we're not ranked very high in the nation in this area, but was to look at what I call a sin tax. That's what it's called in policy terms, but to raise the tax on cigarettes. Secretary Klein has been hammering me for years, and I don't like this either, that we, when I first came into office, ranked 49th in the nation in health. Now, Roy Williams, I can tell you that when you go out to recruit a business, you already know this, and they start looking at Oklahoma, they say, wow, Oklahomans are really unhealthy. They rank 49th in the nation in health. So if I go to Oklahoma and do my company, my employees probably won't show up to work as much because they're not healthy. And for my legislators that are here, they know how much money it costs us in Medicaid. For those of you in the business sector, you know how much your insurance premiums have gone up. I mean, there are lots of reasons for that, but it doesn't help that. So I asked the legislature to consider, which we haven't done in a long time, and we're one of the lowest in the nation, and raising our cigarette tax. Because it's the #1 preventable disease. If you don't smoke, you don't have all the cardiac problems and health problems, cancer problems, than if you do. And so I asked them to raise that fee that's on that, and that would help us get more money, but it would also help us be healthier in our state, and I think it's the most important thing we can do to improve our health. We're actually ranked 46th in the nation, gone from 49 to 46, but that's the #1 thing that we get a bad check on our health rankings for smoking. And why that particular thing? Because about 80% of Oklahomans don't smoke. 80% don't. Now, I have family members that smoke, I still do. And it's not saying that they're bad or anything else, but it would help them too. In fact, once I said that, my sister-in-law smokes, and I thought, oh boy, I'll be in trouble here. She called me one day and she goes, I watched your speech. I thought, oh, here it comes. She goes, that was a really good speech. And she goes, I agreed 100% with everything you said. I thought, oh my gosh, it's a good day for me. But that's one of the ways we can help improve the health, which will save money in the long run for businesses, save money for Medicaid, save people money, and would also help bring in some dollars for our state. And by the way, for our legislators that are here right now, if you pass that legislation now, instead of waiting and letting it get a petition and collecting signatures and going to the vote of people, which will probably be a year and a half, maybe next year, November of next year. But if you passed it right now, and you got the 3/4 vote to get that done, we'd start collecting money immediately, which I could put towards education and the funding gaps that we're experiencing now, between now and June. That's how critical that issue is. I don't know if they'll do that, because it takes a lot of goodwill to be able to do that. We also talked about non-appropriated agencies. There are a lot of agencies that get fees and they don't get appropriations, and then there are some that are not appropriated that give money back to the state, and some that just don't. So we looked at some of those things. I talked a lot about non-critical appropriations, which I call earmarks. I'm gonna call it like it is, rather than pass-throughs did it. They go through a lot of our agencies, but it's specific projects that people would like to fund, different things. Not that they're bad things, it's just that when you got a $1.3 billion shortfall, you should look at those things and see if they're critical core services that the government should be doing. And then I also asked the legislature to look at what's called our revolving funds, which are fees and monies that agencies get that occur every single year. And I got a chart, like, there you go, good job, because you're on top of it. And I wanted to show you this, because we call this one-time funds. You hear that terminology a lot at the Capitol. We're gonna take one-time here, one-time that. And everybody says, well, one-time funds should be for emergencies only, but we do it every year, so let's just call it what it is. We do it every year. So if we have excess money in agencies' accounts, because we over-appropriated, or maybe they hopefully save some money, which I hope they do, or if they collected more fees, rather than just saying it's one-time funds, we could take a percentage, just a small percentage of that, and we do it every year anyway, and just reclassify it back into the general revenue fund so that we can just appropriate it. So I've asked them as an example to look at that, and you can see year after year these funds replenish themselves, so it's not like it really is one-time funds, it's their funds that are there. I also asked them to look at money off the top and how much money we get to a general revenue fund. And Mike, if you could show this next slide. I've been really talking a lot about this over the years, last 2 years. So we have all these different revenue streams that come into the state. And back on the far left side, you can see gradually, year after year after year, to 2016, 2017 is where it ends. Right now, because we take all this money off the top, the legislature only gets this year almost 45 cents of every dollar to be able to allocate to education, to healthcare, to corrections, to roads and bridges, to mental health, whatever the entity might be. And the reason why I'm showing you this chart is because we have so much that's already committed before the legislature has an opportunity to decide where it's going to be spent, that it just doesn't make any sense. And we're not doing our budget wisely. So here's how I can explain that really easy. So you get your paycheck from your business, you got your gross amount, and then you have your net. We all wish we had that gross amount instead of the net. And all that money that comes off the top of your paycheck, your Social Security, your health insurance, your federal tax, your state tax, maybe it's your health savings benefit account, your dental insurance, whatever it might, your life insurance, whatever it might be, retirement, all those things. All that money off the top happens at the state capitol by things that are being taken for many important causes, but I challenge the legislature to look at that and to quit tying their hands behind the back to where they only get 45 cents of every dollar, which is decreasing if they continue to go down this road, and put the money back into the general revenue fund so that when we have years, any year, but it's just smart policy, but especially this year, we can prioritize that funding to key services versus just giving everybody a big cut and get it back in there so we can start that trend going back up. It's a lot of kind of complicated, but it's something I think we need to do. And Mike, can you show them the off the top? So what am I talking about? Well, we got this page. This is all the things that get money off the top. Money that just goes, these things automatically, the legislature doesn't decide, it's just already committed. You see, the Historical Society gets money, Student Aid gets money, all those, tourism capital gets money, important things, scholarship programs important. But you can see that, Mike, I think we got more, don't we? More, yeah. More of the things, Wildlife Commission gets money. All those things, is that the last page? I can't remember how many pages we have on that. Off the top. So third slide, yeah. You got it, okay, good deal. So that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's confusing. And so I'm asking them to look at that, and there are a lot of those things. The other thing I mentioned in my speech was looking at capturing some of our money and how we do commerce these days. I mentioned about buying on the internet sales. It's a big issue, especially for municipalities and communities and retailers. I went into a lot of retailers in December. I said, how's your sales? It's a little slow right now because people are shopping online. We didn't have online shopping when we developed our budgeting system decades upon decades upon decades, 50, 60 years ago, and it changes all the time, but certainly even within the last 15 to 20 years, maybe last 10 years, we weren't shopping to the extent that we're shopping yet. And so we have 150 different sales tax and use exemptions in our state budget, which I've asked the legislature to even look at those. Those are things you can think about. And that amount of money adds up to, I think we got another chart, $8.1 billion. Why does it matter? Because if you look in the purple, that's the money the legislature appropriates every year. This past year for our budget, it's $6.9 billion. But we exempt collections on $8 billion, which is twice as much, it's more. It's more than 100% more than our state budget. And so I said, surely there's a smarter way of doing this at the Capitol. I'm not saying you take them all away, but look at it. Look at it and see if it makes sense. So we have another slideshow. So what am I talking about? These are some of the things. Not saying they're all bad, not saying we shouldn't keep some of them, but I'm saying we should look at them. Mike, we got several pages of, there's page 2. As you can see, a lot of things that get an exemption. In other words, you just don't pay tax on these things. So that's that $8 billion that could be put back into our general revenue fund for the legislature to be able to allocate and make decisions on if we look at those things. And once again, things have changed dramatically in how we do commerce, how we do business. Just to give you an example, Texas covers 60 more items on their sales tax than we do. New Mexico covers 130 more things on their sales tax than we do. And we have 150 exemptions on ours. So a lot of times the mayors and the city council people will come up and say, our revenues are going down in our city. We can't pay for fire, we can't pay for police, we can't pay for ambulance. We have infrastructure, sewage problems, because we're not getting the revenue in, so they got the internet sales tax drop hurting them, and then they got all these sales tax exemptions hurting them too. So something else that I think needs to be fixed in our budget. As I mentioned, I want to skip through some of this, Mike, about there were agencies that I gave larger cuts to, agencies I gave smaller cuts to, like education, certainly health, human services, corrections. Many I gave extra money to, like corrections, which is very critical in doing that. And we got a lot of important decisions that we have to make. I'm trying to go, Mike, to our next slide that we have here and look at some of the things that we need to continue to talk about. What's our next slide up there, Mike? Perfect, okay, we'll do that in a few moments. So, a couple of quick things before I close here. So, in my budget, I also put in a $3,000 pay raise for teachers. And a lot of people said, why would you do that in a year when you have a budget shortfall? Well, many reasons is we have 1,000 teacher job openings. Secondly, we've got to step it up because we know we're not paying our teachers enough. But third, there's an old saying in politics, which I believe, and it says, never let a crisis go to waste. In other words, a crisis creates change and creates opportunities to force people to do the things they need to do that should have been done, but they don't. Sometimes you win battles, sometimes you lose battles. I asked our legislature in my speech to look at our education system so I could get more money back to teachers to give them pay raises. So I asked them, and it was pretty bold, to look at what's called our dependent schools across our state, which are, by the way, in rural areas and in metropolitan areas, both. It's not a rural issue, it's both. And I said, I want you to look at underperforming schools, in other words, failing schools. And if you look in the paper today, there's a list of D and F schools. And I said, if a school is underperforming, and we have a school, there are some schools that are a mile, 2 miles down the street, some that are 5 miles down the street, but if you have a school that's really doing well because they got a good chief financial officer, or they got a good manager, or if they're just having problems, maybe it's even funding, superintendent, look at whether we could merge administrative costs. I didn't say close a rural school. I never ever said, in fact, I said just the opposite. I said, we are not going to close rural schools. What I'm talking about is, can we share costs? It's like if you have a division in your company that's underperforming, and you got another division that's doing good, can you combine them? And can you share IT? Can you share payroll? Can you share purchasing? Can you share equipment? And can you help that school perform better? Because who wants their child to go to a failing school? I don't. But there are a lot of dependent schools that are A schools. I love them. They're doing great. So take that brain trust and put them together so all schools can be good schools. So I asked them to do that. And of course, guess what happened yesterday? Nobody had the guts to do it. And I just say that because we got to do hard work this year, and this is a year to do the hard work. So we didn't do that, but there are still other bills out there that will look at administrative costs to help us with getting the schools the money that we need. Criminal justice reform, I'll just mention that real quick. I think all of you know that we have a substance abuse problem in our state. It's been widely talked about. We have over prison crowding in our state. It's about 120% capacity. We have prisons that are very old, very, very old. We want to keep dangerous people in prison, locked up, to keep our communities safe. But is there anybody in this audience that doesn't have a relative, that doesn't have a coworker, that doesn't know someone that is addicted to pain pills or some other thing that you're not scared of, but they're just messing up and they need help? Anybody? That's my point. So I've asked our legislature to look at our sentencing laws, and let's find a better way to help get people who are addicted to something. into treatment programs, get them their education, get them back to work, versus, and I do part of roles all the time in my office, it comes to me. But there are times I'll see someone who gets 1 year for this, and I'll see another guy that's been convicted on drugs that gets 30 years. I think, why is it so inconsistent? Because you put somebody that's got an addiction issue in, doesn't have another conviction, but just addiction issue, and they've got 30 years, guess how they come out? Just like the bad guys in there for the most part. So one of the ways that we can keep our families together, we can keep children out of DHS custody, get people into the workforce, supporting their families, is to work with our district attorneys, work with the legislature to do some criminal justice reform, and they passed one of those bills this past week, which I appreciate. But it's a very serious topic that we need to work on, is looking at nonviolent offenders that are in our prison systems and how we can do better in our correctional institutions. And then last thing I just want to close with is earthquakes. There's been a lot of talk about earthquakes. There are some people out there having forums who like to say the state's not doing anything, which is false. So back in September of 2014, this is 2016, but back in 2014, we put together a Governor's Coordinating Council on Seismic Activity. We brought together all kinds of people, from geologists to OU, OSU researchers, to U.S. Geological Survey, to environmentalists, to experts in the industry regulators, the Corporation Commission. And we had them start meeting back then to look at the increased number of earthquakes. Because nobody, including me, wants damage to their home, or wants damage to their business. And I can tell you that Mike Patterson, our Director of Transportation, has to go out and inspect our roads and bridges every time we have an earthquake over a certain amount. It's over 3, is that what you just said? Okay, thank you. And we have to go out and inspect our dams and our Capitol. I mean, you know the condition of the Capitol. So that's what we have been doing for quite a long time. January 2015, once again, a year ago, the Corporation Commission, working with this group and others, wisely put in a traffic light system. Red, stop on disposal wells. Yellow, caution, because you may be in an area that's seen an increased earthquakes or maybe has a natural fault line. Green, you forgo, no earthquakes in that area, no known fault lines of any magnitude in that area. So they could better inform their staff, work with the energy companies in particular, and others, the U.S. Geological Survey and researchers, to look at how we can have a system that addresses any type of disposal wells with their volume, with their location, with their natural fault line areas they might be in, and when we see increased earthquakes, to reduce the number of earthquakes that we have, because I can promise you the energy companies want the same thing, because the energy companies don't like to get beat up either. But by the way, you heard me just talk about the financial condition of our state, 19% revenue loss. You can't shut down energy production in Oklahoma unless you want to just wipe out the economy even worse. But we have to deal with science and facts and not political rhetoric and not emotion. It's critical for our economy. It's critical for a very important industry in our state, which is the energy sector. Mike, I think we got another slide. Can you go read to that? So in December 2015, I thought, well, okay, we've got our council that's been in place almost 2 years. We've got the Corporation Commission doing their job, which they have the legal regulatory responsibility. So let's take it one step further, and let's put in a fact-finding group designed to look at produced water in our state through disposal wells, and see if there's a way to safely and effectively use produced water to both address earthquakes and also just to make sure we have new water sources, which are always critical, especially when we go through droughts in our state. So Secretary Reed's Department of Environmental Quality, lots of different entities, according, even our Secretary of Energy and Environment have been working on that. And so we put that into place. And then the third thing we've done was I asked Commissioner Dana Murphy and the other commissioners, what do you need financially? Legislature's not in, but what do you need that would really make a difference? They said, we need money. Because even 2 years ago, until we started seeing this tremendous rise in things, we didn't have staff. I mean, 10 years ago, they didn't need a big staff with geologists and technology. She said, we don't have the technology we need. We don't have the staff we need. We don't have the equipment we need. And so I got to thinking about it, and we've got an emergency fund. So I immediately signed a letter to give them $1.4 million for an emergency fund to hire geologists to put in more seismic monitoring equipment into certain areas where we've seen an uptick in earthquake. Certainly going to have other staff that will help them. They needed a computer system desperately that was modern, that they could do real time out in the field. Something happens, they take that information, it goes straight to the Corporation Commission. Person on that staff looks at it and says, okay, here's where we got a problem. Let's reduce bank volumes in this area. Let's make a change and dispose of wells in that area. And so they've taken action, 14 different directives, 600 wells affected by directives, and then today, isn't it? Today, they're going to have more directives, which you probably heard about on the news, that would help address some of the earthquakes in a 5,000 square area in the Arbuckle disposal area. Put in, once again, 200 plus more wells into that, total of 800 and some odd wells now. So I tell you all that because you got a lot of people out there saying nothing's being done. It's just not true. It's been happening for a long time. We just don't go out and hold press conferences and have rallies to do it. But I want you to know the state's taking it seriously because it's our homes, it's our businesses, it's our reputation as a state. It's the reputation of the energy sector, and the energy sector has been very, very much involved in helping us with all of that. So that's the last of my slides. I want to just close real quickly because I've told you a lot of stuff. But I want to tell you 3 very positive things because I think it's also important, as I said earlier on, to focus on positive things. So we know that we have a lot of children that are in DHS custody. So last year we launched a major initiative called Oklahoma Fosters. We did our second event in Tulsa this week. We did one in Oklahoma City last fall. We're doing several around the state of Oklahoma. But we have over 10,000 children who are in DHS custody for various reasons. And we want to make sure they're protected and taken care of. But if at all possible, if we can get the families back healthy, we'd like to put those children back with their parents. But if that's not possible, then they have to be put somewhere. And so we launched a big initiative to get more people involved in foster and adoptive care. And the good news is there are so many people stepping forward to help. It's very, very positive that people are willing to do the Oklahoma standard, which is to take care of their own, and stepping up to foster and adopt children in our state. Tulsa, we had a great crowd and a lot of new people. I launched this last November, and we had over 350 new families apply just since that time period, and we're just getting the word out. The second thing I wanted to tell you is that Secretary of Education and Workforce, Stanley Shirley, and I, we think it's important to recognize schools when they do good. And so we developed the A through F grading system, which was controversial a couple of years ago. So we went out, and we're going to start doing this. We went out to our first school in Sapulpa. Sapulpa had made a D+ in their grade on their school, and they went to a B. And so we went and we gave them a 2016 Educational Achievement Award to their school. We had 800 people, screaming kids, happy parents, happy superintendents, happy principals. And I think it's important that you celebrate education excellence, especially when people are trying to do good things. So we're going to go out and do some more of that. And the third thing I'll just mention, because I got Secretary Snodgrass, Secretary of Commerce and Tourism, is that, I mean, you see what's happening in Oklahoma City with tourism. You go down by the river and all the boathouses and the whitewater, and Boy, you got the Thunder, you got Great Museums, the canal. There are so many fun things happening here in Oklahoma City, but our tourism numbers, for the number of visitors coming to Oklahoma, is up 15% in the state in the last 5 years. So it's working because tourism and quality of life issues are very important to businesses that are looking at relocating to a state, or even for us, for our own quality of life. So thank you for your tremendous work that the tourism department is doing to help us make Oklahoma a better place to live, to work, and to raise a family. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Thank you, Governor, for being with us. Congressman Russell, thank you. Cabinet members, thank you for being here. We got a lot to do on Lincoln Boulevard this year. Let's engage. We're adjourned.